Hey guys, this is Mike, and in this Cinema 4D tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do a logo camera animation. So open up a new document, and I am going to go to Primitives and Torus. Now I want to change the geometry, how much resolution we have with this. So go to NB on your keyboard, and we're gonna go to, not ring segments, and keep that fine. Let's go to pipe segments and bring this all the way down to about 3 or 4. Let's try 3. And I want to go to the orientation. I want to go +Z. Next I want to go to, let's see, we're going to go to the bend deformer. I'm going to drag this to a child underneath the torus. Next we want to go to fit to parent, and I want to increase the strength to something like, let me zoom out, something like this. Except if you notice, we kind of lose geometry at this curve. So go to torus, and we're gonna up the ring segments, and we're just gonna keep going up until this smooths out a little bit. Okay. Now I like the way the shape is, I just don't like this hard edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this editable. And you click this icon here or C on your keyboard. And we're going to go to line mode. UL on your keyboard is going to bring up loop selection. And let me zoom in a little bit. I want to select these lines and these lines in the back. So hold down Shift, and I just want to make sure that all these lines are selected. And I'm going to go to MS on your keyboard. That's going to bring up bevel. And let me zoom in. And if I put in about one subdivision, one subdivision, and that kind of gives it a more smoothed out just a little bit on that edge. I just didn't like that sharp edge. And that might be a little bit too much. Let me just undo and then drag that out a little bit. So you just kind of eyeball that to what seems and looks good. Now go back to object mode, and you can see how this kind of has a nicer edge, nicer beveled edge. Okay, next I want to put in some text. Let me rotate this around slightly. And now I'll go to MoGraph, MoText. And I want to put in, I was going something like Crescent Software. I have no idea if that's an actual company. It's something that I just kind of came up with. And it might be a little bit too large. So T on your keyboard is going to transform. And I just kind of want to put this just roughly into place. I also want to go to the Caps tab, select your MoText Caps tab, and then go to Fillet Cap for both the start and end. And let me zoom in. I just want to give it a better, just a better smoothing. And we can up this to 5 for both the start and the end steps. And kind of experiment a little bit with just kind of curving that off a little bit. And that might be a little too tight. You can also adjust if you go to the Object tab and go to horizontal spacing. You can kind of spread out that text a little bit if it's getting a little too close in there. Okay, so now that we have that, I want to give this a background. So I'm just going to simply go to a plane, go to +Z orientation, and T on your keyboard, you can simply just transform this and pull this out. Let me take a look. And right now it's kind of cutting our logo right in half. So if you go to side mode or side view, you can kind of just pull this backwards. And while we're in this view, we can also look at where the text is in relation to the background. So I'm going to select Mode Text and just pull this backwards so it's just over the plane. And if we go to perspective mode, F1 on your keyboard, let me zoom around, and you can kind of see, looks like we're still, no, I guess we're good. Pretty close to that logo, this little shape that we made, but I think that's fine. Okay, so now that we have our little shape, this little logo design, and our text, now we can start adding in some lights. So I'm going to add in a light, and I'm going to go to area, I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to make it a lot larger and just pull this a little bit into position. I want to change the color to something a little bit more yellowish, a little yellow orange, but very subtle. And for the shadow, I want to put shadow map soft. Okay. And now I want to duplicate this light. I'll pull this over, rotate around to about 90 degrees. Move this over to the side of our logo, and we can play with the height and size of it, and I'm just going to rotate this around towards our logo. And we can also put in another light. We can copy this light and just kind of bring this over, make this an omni, and we can keep the same color, but we can drop down the intensity. And just kind of give it another light. We can also go to maybe a bluish color. That might be a little too much, but we can kind of take a look at it as we render. Okay. All right, now we have our lights set up. I want to start making some materials. So create new material. And we're going to double click on that. For the color, we'll go to Fresnel. Click on Fresnel. Double click on this node, and we're going to go to, say, something like a blue, a little closer to like the cyan color. I'm just going to drag this until we see something that looks good. And command click, drag this over. We're just going to pull out this one black node and double click on this, and we're just going to make this a little bit darker. Might be a little bit too much. Something subtle. Now I also want to add in a reflection. So check the reflection and then go to Fresnel. Click on Fresnel. Fresnel's fine. I want to change the color slightly. And we will go to something like something high, something 50 or 60. And specular is fine. Close off. Now we want to do something with the text. I want to double click, make a new material. We'll go to color, and I'm just going to use like an off-white. Doesn't have to be very strong, just an off-white there. And I really don't need to add in any other options. You can play with reflection if you want. Maybe just something subtle. We'll add a Fresnel and just give it a subtle reflection. And I always make sure that the color is just slightly off. I never like things completely white or completely black. It just feels like it gives it a more realism. All right, now that we have that, let's add in a camera. And I also want to add in a spline. And I was playing with this arc. So let's continue using that. I want to bring this over to about 90%, rotate this around, and make it a lot larger. And let me zoom out so you can see the arc in relation to our logo. I'm just going to bring this down, and I'm going to pull this out all the way here. Remember, as I was experimenting with this for the first time, it needs to be pretty far away. Now, we want to have this camera follow the path of our arc. So in order to do that, we're going to have to right-click on our arc. Right-click on our camera, and we'll go to Align to Spline. And then we'll add our arc to the spline path. You can just drag that right into the path. And we'll be using position as a keyframe in order to animate around. So if you look through the camera, you're going to see we're not anywhere near our logo. So we're going to have to put a target. So right click on your camera, and we'll go to Cinema 4D tags, and then we'll go down to target. Now for target, we're going to have to use the logo and our text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the logo, text, and Option G to create a group. And we're just going to name this logo. So if you click on the target tag, we're going to add logo into target object. Now we're seeing just the logo. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we're at 0 frame. Click on our click on our align to path, align to spline, and we're going to command click this button right next to position, and you can see it makes it red, and drag our frame all the way to the end, and we're going to move our percentage all the way to 100%. Make sure you command click that same button, and then we add another keyframe. So as you can see, we have this subtle camera move. So now that we have that, let's get our materials on our logo and text. So I'm going to drag the blue onto the torus and drag the white onto our motext. And to keep things organized, we can just name this shape and name this text. Okay. Now, one thing I didn't do is give a material for the background. So let's make a new color, new material. We'll double click on that, and in color we'll go to Fresnel and click on Fresnel, and I want to use kind of like an off-white, a warmer color, and I want to drag this darkness scale about here, maybe a little bit more. Command click this node and drag this all the way over, pull this black out, and double click on this node, and we're just going to make this a little bit darker. Next, I want to give it a slight reflection. So check this. Check the color a little bit to an off color. And we'll go to Fresnel. And we'll drop this down pretty low. So we'll keep the brightness to maybe around 10-12% and the mix strength down to around something similar. Except now I want to put in a bump. So check bump. And then make sure we go to material. I'm sorry, not material, noise. And we'll click on noise, and then we'll try something like one I liked. Let's see. I don't think it was Cranial. I believe it was Luca. You can experiment which ones that you like. Let's try Luca. I want to see how that looks. I'm thinking that it wasn't. Not gaseous Luca. Let's try how this, see how this looks. I always experiment a little bit with the seed. And let's drag this onto our plane. I want to give this a render. That doesn't look too bad. Actually looks pretty good. It's just a little too much for me. I like to pull it back just a little bit. Maybe 5. And let's give another test render. Yeah, that's not too bad. I like that. Now, I like how everything looks. The only thing, I want to see a little bit more reflection. And in order to do that, it needs something to reflect off of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a plane. Let me click off our camera. And and I want to put in a plane. R on your keyboard, and let's rotate this around, and then we're just going to drag this up. I'm just going to pull this out. We're going to put this white text, we're going to put this on the plane. Just need something white, something reflective. And I want to create a few of these. I just want to duplicate these 4. And I want to make sure it's not in the path of our camera. So let's zoom in. Okay. Let's give another render. Now you can see the difference. You can see the reflection that's coming up off of our little panels that we made. And it gives it some reflection. You can see there's some a little bit of pixelation. That's because we don't have anti-aliasing on. I usually do that at the end, at the final render, but that will smooth things out. But I like how we have our the light really kind of shines off some of these little corners here. Well, one thing I'm noticing is it's not completely centered. Now, and I can't, since this camera is locked to this arc and we have our target set, I can't do anything with the coordinates of our camera. So what's happening is that the camera has its target to our logo, which is this null that we made. So in order to adjust that, we can use our adjust this axis. So click on this button, and we can adjust where this is positioned in our frame. So it's just, if that ever happens, what's happening is it's looking at all these objects. So if you have this of adjusting this axis point on, you can then center your logo or whatever you're looking at through the camera simply by just adjusting this a little bit. So I'm going to click off this, and I'm just going to give it another render. And it looks pretty good. I'm just kind of looking at the space around our logo. Maybe just a little bit further down. Just a little bit more. And you know, it's just kind of a going back and forth and adjusting it just a little bit to how you want it and how you want it to look. Okay, so I have our text, we have our materials on, we've done our background, we have our animation. Now the only thing that we need to do now is render. So let's go to our render settings. We can click on this little gearbox here, and we'll give it a larger 1280 by 720. We'll choose anti-aliasing, and we'll choose best. And we can go to ambient occlusion. That'll give us a little bit better shadows in the corners. I usually put ambient occlusion. It just gives it a nicer, clearer and crisper look with the shadows in the corners. So we'll do a test render. And we can turn this, uncheck this for now. And we're going to make a current frame. So I just want to take a look at a few angles. Now you can really see those reflections coming through. In fact, that might be a little bit too much. But that's not bad. I like that. And I like how the background material, it's just enough texture back there that I like. Let's go at middle section. We'll do another test render. I really like how those reflections kind of come through. And you can see this bevel really kind of gives it a nice sweep. I kind of like that. The text is pretty plain, but we're just kind of really just kind of going over some of these tools that you can use for animation. Just gives you some flexibility, being able to have this connected to a spline. And you can use all these different types of splines, by the way. It doesn't have to be the arc. It can be the circle, this helix. Some of these you can even make your own using the Bezier spline. So I'm liking how everything is. Let's do a render, and I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to let this render, and we'll kind of just wrap things up. Okay, I finished rendering, and let's click play. And as you can see, we completed the animation, and I do like how everything. I love the smooth curves. You can see the animation of the reflection from the white panels that we made. I think that looks really nice. And it does seem a little bit plain, but keep in mind we are just trying to go over some basics, some fundamentals with animation. Real quick, I just want to go back and show you the settings that I had. Output, I just made it a little bit larger, 1280 by 720, but I used all frames, and so just keep that in mind. And I just saved it out. I know I usually use TIFF files, single frame files, but I used a QuickTime Movie just for this tutorial. But I usually go with something like a TIFF or a Photoshop file. That way, if I ever have to stop the video for some reason, or it hasn't happened yet, but if my computer crashes, at least I don't have to start completely over from scratch. So that's my that's just something that I usually do. But for this one, I just want to QuickTime Movie to quickly take a look at that render. So just to recap, we just did some the shape, a little bit of modeling, not much. I just wanted to show a little bit of that curve, that bevel curve, and then we just put in the text. We did some materials for the background and the shape, and the camera movement where we align to spline and align that to our arc. Put in the target, put in some lighting, and that's pretty much it. It's just some very basics, but just keep in mind that you can use different ways of using a camera, and you can use different types of splines that you can attach that to do more advanced and complex camera movements. And later I'm going to do some tutorials on how to have a camera aligned to a spline, and then morph using camera morph to another camera, and that will seamlessly go from one camera to the next, so that you have the connection to the spline, but also a little freedom with having another camera movement. So thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you like this video. Thanks. Bye.